The city of Los Angeles buzzed with its usual frenetic energy, a kaleidoscope of contrasts. On one end were sprawling homeless encampments, where desperation and hope coexisted under the harsh Californian sun. On the other end were pristine storefronts showcasing luxury cars, designer goods, and the promises of a life far removed from struggle. Benny stood somewhere in between, leaning against a graffiti-streaked wall, holding a tattered cardboard sign that read, "Anything helps, God bless." Life for Benny had never been this bleak. Once a college dropout who thought he'd figure things out someday, that someday had never come. The years had been cruel, and now at 36, Benny found himself among the city's countless invisible souls, surviving on the edge of nothing. Please hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss an update. Let us know where you're watching from in the comments below. On most days, Benny's presence was met with indifference. People hurried past without so much as a glance. But today felt different. Across the street, a crowd gathered outside a small production studio. Benny couldn't help but notice the unmistakable figure stepping out of the glass doors. Clint Eastwood himself. The legendary actor and director's presence radiated an aura of gravitas, drawing the attention of everyone around him. Photographers clicked away while a group of assistants hovered nearby, hanging on his every word. For a moment, Benny felt a pang of resentment. How could one man hold so much respect and influence, while others like him were fighting just to stay alive? But then a strange thought entered his mind. What if I just asked him for something? What's the worst that could happen? Before he could second-guess himself, Benny moved toward the sidewalk where Clint was walking. His heart pounded as he closed the gap, adrenaline drowning out the voices of doubt in his mind. Taking a deep breath, he called out, "Hey, sir, can you give me $1?" The words hung in the air like a challenge. Benny expected Eastwood to ignore him or, at best, toss a bill in his direction without a second thought. But to his astonishment, Clint stopped in his tracks. The Hollywood legend turned slowly, his piercing gaze locking onto Benny. For a moment, it felt like the entire world had gone silent. The assistants froze mid-step, and even the clicking cameras seemed to pause. Eastwood tilted his head, his expression inscrutable beneath the shadow of his brow. $1? He repeated, his voice gravelly but even. Benny nodded, his mouth suddenly dry. Clint broke into a faint smile, one that didn't quite reach his eyes. "I won't give you $1, he said finally, "but I'll give you something better." Benny blinked, confused. "Better? Like what?" "Come back here tomorrow at noon," Clint replied, ignoring the murmurs from his entourage. "I have an idea." Before Benny could ask for clarification, Eastwood turned and strode toward an awaiting black SUV, his assistants trailing behind him. Within seconds, the vehicle disappeared into the city's traffic, leaving Benny standing there dumbfounded. For a long moment, Benny remained rooted to the spot, clutching his battered sign. The other homeless people nearby stared at him, their expressions ranging from incredulity to envy. One of them finally broke the silence. "What did you say to him?" Benny shook his head. "I just asked for $1." The man laughed, a sharp, bitter sound. "And what did he say? Going to give you a role in his next film?" Benny shrugged, his mind still reeling. "He said to meet him tomorrow." The laughter faded. The man gave Benny a skeptical look but didn't press further. As the sun began to set, Benny walked back to his usual sleeping spot under a nearby overpass. His mind raced with possibilities, each one more outlandish than the last. Was this some kind of joke? A cruel test? Or could it really be an opportunity? That night, as Benny lay on the cold concrete, staring up at the stars peeking through the smog-filled sky, he allowed himself to feel something he hadn't felt in years, a spark of hope. Whatever awaited him tomorrow, it couldn't be worse than the life he was already living. For the first time in a long while, Benny drifted off to sleep, thinking about the possibilities of better. Benny awoke with an uncharacteristic feeling of anticipation. Usually, mornings were just another stretch of time to endure, a blur of scavenging for food, dodging judgmental glares, and wondering how he'd make it through another day. But today was different. Today he had an appointment with one of the most respected figures in Hollywood. By the time Benny arrived at the production studio, the sun was high, casting a warm glow over the modest building. His heart pounded as he looked around, half expecting Clint Eastwood to be a no-show. But there he was, standing near the entrance, dressed in a simple black jacket and jeans, as if this were just another day in his extraordinary life. Clint spotted Benny and waved him over. "Glad you came," he said, his tone firm but not unkind. "Let's take a walk." Benny followed him, feeling both out of place and oddly hopeful. As they strolled through the quiet back streets of Los Angeles, Eastwood began to speak. "People often assume homelessness is just about a lack of resources," he said, his voice thoughtful. "But it's more than that. It's about a lack of opportunity, structure, and most importantly, belief. Belief in oneself and belief from others." Benny listened intently, unsure where this was going, but fascinated by the legendary actor's words. "So why are you telling me this?" he finally asked. Clint stopped walking and turned to face him. "Because I want to try something new. My production company isn't just about making films. It's about telling stories that matter, stories that can change lives. We're launching a new program to help people like you rebuild their lives. But I need someone to test it first. Someone who's willing to take a chance." Benny raised an eyebrow. "You want me to test it?" "Why?" Clint smiled faintly. "Because you asked for $1 yesterday. Instead of walking away, I saw something in your eyes. Determination, maybe. You're bold enough to take a chance, and that's exactly what I need." He gestured toward a nearby parking lot where a modest pickup truck was parked. "Here's the deal. I want you to be the first participant in this program. We'll give you access to resources, tools, and opportunities, but you have to prove you're up to the challenge. Each step will test your determination, creativity, and willingness to grow. The first task starts now." Benny stared at the truck, his mind racing. "Wait, you want me to do something with that?" Clint nodded. "I want you to drive it through downtown Los Angeles without breaking a single traffic rule. It might sound simple, but it's harder than you think." Benny's stomach sank. "I've never driven a car before," he admitted. "That's fine," Clint said without hesitation. "We'll teach you. Think of it as a crash course. Figuratively, of course." Before Benny could protest further, a driving instructor approached, carrying a clipboard and a reassuring smile. "Hi, Benny," she said. "I'm Clara. I'll be helping you get the hang of things today." The next few hours were a whirlwind of instructions, practice runs, and moments of sheer terror. Benny clutched the steering wheel as if his life depended on it, his palms sweaty and his heart racing every time he pressed the accelerator. The pickup truck felt massive and unwieldy under his inexperienced hands. "Relax," Clara said gently. "The vehicle responds to your input. Trust the process and yourself." By the end of the session, Benny had managed to navigate a quiet parking lot without incident. It wasn't much, but it was a start. As he stepped out of the truck, exhausted but oddly exhilarated, Eastwood approached. "How'd it go?" he asked. Clara smiled. "He's a quick learner. With a little more practice, I think he can handle the challenge." Clint looked at Benny, his expression serious but encouraging. "Tomorrow the real test begins. Are you ready?" Benny hesitated, then nodded. "I think so." "Good," Clint said, clapping him on the shoulder. "Get some rest. You'll need it." As Benny walked away from the studio, he felt something he hadn't experienced in years, a sense of purpose. For the first time in a long while, he wasn't just surviving, he was working towards something. Whatever tomorrow brought, he was determined to prove that he was more than just a man with a cardboard sign. Benny didn't sleep much that night. Every time he closed his eyes, his mind conjured vivid images of the pickup truck and the daunting challenge ahead of him. He wasn't just worried about navigating downtown Los Angeles traffic. He was worried about failing. For years, failure had been his constant companion, a relentless shadow that seemed to follow him no matter what he tried. The next morning, Benny arrived at the studio parking lot just as the sun began to creep over the city. Clara, the driving instructor from the day before, was already there, waiting by the truck. She greeted him with a warm smile, her easy demeanor a stark contrast to the anxiety bubbling inside Benny. "Ready for round 2?" she asked. "Ready as I'll ever be," Benny replied, though his voice betrayed his nerves. Clara walked him through a quick refresher on the basics: how to start the truck, adjust the mirrors, and use the signals. She reminded him that while the vehicle had safety features, he was still in control. Driving is about partnership, she explained. The truck will respond to your commands, but you need to stay focused and make the decisions. You're the one in charge. The words resonated with Benny in a way he didn't expect. For most of his life, he had felt like he wasn't in charge of anything. Circumstances, bad luck, and his own mistakes had dictated his path. But now behind the wheel of this truck, he felt a flicker of control, a sense that maybe, just maybe, he could steer his life in a new direction. Clara led him onto a quiet residential street for his first test of the day. The road was empty except for a few parked cars, and Benny breathed a little easier as he navigated the simple route. But as the morning progressed, Clara gradually introduced more complexity. Busier streets, faster traffic, and tricky intersections. At first, Benny struggled. His hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly that his knuckles turned white, and he flinched at every honking horn and sudden brake light. Once, he accidentally veered too close to the curb, scraping the edge of a tire. Clara remained calm, offering gentle guidance and encouragement. "Don't let the mistakes get to you," she said after Benny muttered a string of apologies. "You're going to mess up. It's part of learning. What matters is how you recover." By midday, Benny started to find a rhythm. He began to trust the truck's handling, marveling at how responsive it was to his increasingly confident commands. But more importantly, he began to trust himself. With each successful turn and stop, his confidence grew. "Nice work," Clara said as Benny smoothly navigated a tricky left turn at a busy intersection. "You're getting the hang of this." Benny allowed himself a small smile. "Feels like I'm actually doing something right for once." Clara laughed. "You are, but don't get too comfortable yet. Downtown is a whole different ballgame." As the afternoon wore on, Clara pushed Benny to tackle more challenging routes. They ventured into busier neighborhoods where pedestrians darted across streets and impatient drivers weaved between lanes. Benny's nerves returned, but this time he managed to keep them in check. He reminded himself of Clara's words, "You're in charge." By the end of the day, Benny had logged several hours behind the wheel and had managed to complete a practice route through a less congested part of downtown without a single major mistake. Exhausted but exhilarated, he parked the truck back at the studio lot and stepped out, feeling a mix of relief and pride. Clint Eastwood arrived just as Benny was wiping sweat from his brow. The legendary director surveyed the truck, then turned to Benny. "How'd it go?" he asked, his tone casual but curious. "He's making great progress," Clara said with a nod. "I think he's ready for the challenge tomorrow." Eastwood raised an eyebrow at Benny. "What do you think? Are you ready to take on the real thing?" Benny hesitated, the weight of the question pressing down on him. But then he thought about everything he had learned that day, the small victories, the moments of doubt he had overcome, and the growing belief that he could do this. "I'm ready," he said firmly. Clint's lips curved into a slight smile. "Good. Then I'll see you here at 9 sharp. And remember, Benny, this isn't just about driving. It's about proving to yourself that you're capable of more than you think." As Benny walked away, the sun dipping low in the sky, he felt a surge of determination. Tomorrow he wouldn't just be driving a truck through downtown Los Angeles. He'd be driving toward a future that, for the first time in years, felt within his reach. The morning of the challenge came quicker than Benny had expected. As he arrived at the studio, a small crowd had already gathered. A few production crew members, some media personnel with cameras slung over their shoulders, and even curious onlookers. They created a buzz of energy that made Benny's stomach churn. It wasn't every day that a homeless man was given a chance to take on a task like this, and the attention felt overwhelming. Clint greeted him with his characteristic mix of directness and quiet dignity. "This is it," he said, gesturing to the pickup truck parked nearby. The vehicle looked even more intimidating today, its polished exterior reflecting the morning sun. "You've got the route loaded into the navigation. Just follow the rules, trust your instinct, and remember, this isn't just about getting from point A to point B. It's about how you handle yourself along the way." Benny nodded, though his hands trembled slightly as he accepted the keys. Clara gave him a reassuring pat on the shoulder. "You've got this," she said as Benny slid into the driver's seat. "Keep it anyway," Clint insisted. "A reminder of where you started and how far you've come." Benny accepted the dollar, tucking it carefully into his wallet. Not because he needed it, but because it represented the question that had changed everything. Sometimes the most valuable things in life come from the humblest requests. For Benny, it wasn't the dollar that mattered. It was the dignity, purpose, and self-belief he had found along the way. The cab of the truck felt both familiar and alien. The GPS display lit up, showing the route he was to follow through the heart of downtown Los Angeles. The path would take him through some of the busiest intersections and most unpredictable traffic patterns in the city. He took a deep breath, adjusted his mirrors, and started the engine. The truck rumbled to life, and with a light touch on the accelerator, Benny eased out of the parking lot and onto the main road. At first, everything felt manageable. The traffic was relatively light, and Benny found himself settling into a comfortable rhythm. But as he approached the city center, the complexity of the challenge began to reveal itself. Downtown Los Angeles was a chaotic tapestry of honking horns, jaywalking pedestrians, and drivers who seemed to think traffic laws were mere suggestions. Benny's palms grew sweaty as he navigated through the streets, his eyes darting between the road, the mirrors, and the GPS display. At one point, a cyclist suddenly swerved into his lane, forcing Benny to brake sharply. His heart pounded as the truck's brakes caught just in time to prevent a collision. "Stay calm," he muttered to himself. "You've got this." As he approached a major intersection, the light turned yellow. Instinctively, Benny debated whether to speed up or slow down. A split-second decision that could make or break the challenge. He remembered Clara's training and opted to slow down, stopping smoothly at the light just as it turned red. He glanced at the rearview mirror and saw Clint's SUV following at a distance, watching his every move. Benny's nerves were tested again when he entered a construction zone. Orange cones lined the narrow lanes, and workers in neon vests moved unpredictably. A truck ahead of him slowed to an almost complete stop, causing a domino effect of braking cars. Benny gripped the wheel tightly, carefully maneuvering the pickup through the bottleneck. Despite the challenges, he began to notice something remarkable. The longer he drove, the more he started to trust not just the truck's capabilities but his own. Each successful turn, stop, and lane change felt like a small victory, chipping away at the doubts that had plagued him for years. As he neared the end of the route, Benny encountered one final test, a chaotic roundabout with multiple entry points and an endless stream of impatient drivers. He took a deep breath, signaled his intention, and merged into the flow of traffic. His steady hands and focused mind ensured he exited safely, heading toward the destination, a designated parking lot where Clint and the small crowd were waiting. Benny's shoulders sagged with relief as he guided the truck into a parking spot and turned off the engine. The moment he stepped out, a cheer erupted from the onlookers. Clint approached, his expression unreadable. Benny wiped his sweaty palms on his jeans, bracing for feedback. "Well?" he asked hesitantly. Clint pulled out a tablet and reviewed the footage recorded by the truck's cameras. After a long pause, he looked up and smiled, a genuine smile that reached his eyes. "Not a single infraction," he said. "You followed every rule perfectly. Impressive work." Benny felt a surge of pride unlike anything he had experienced in years. The doubts, the fears, the moments of hesitation, all of it melted away in the face of this small but significant triumph. "You didn't just drive a truck through LA traffic," Clint continued. "You proved that with the right mindset and determination, you can handle even the toughest challenges. This is just the beginning, Benny. Are you ready for the next step?" Benny nodded, a newfound confidence shining in his eyes. "Let's do it." As the crowd dispersed and the production crew congratulated him, Benny realized something profound. This wasn't just a test of his driving skills. It was a test of his ability to reclaim control over his life. And for the first time in years, he felt like he was in the driver's seat. In the months that followed, Benny's life transformed in ways he could never have imagined. Clint's program expanded, offering opportunities for housing, skills training, and meaningful work to those willing to take on the challenges. Benny became not just a participant, but a mentor, using his experience to guide others through their own journeys of transformation. 1 year after that fateful day when he had asked Clint Eastwood for $1, Benny stood on a stage at a charity gala, sharing his story with hundreds of people. As he spoke about second chances and the power of belief, he caught Clint's eye in the audience. The legendary director gave him a subtle nod, a gesture of respect between equals. After the event, Clint approached him, pulling something from his pocket. I never gave you this, he said, holding out a crisp $1 bill. Benny laughed. I think I got something better.